Hey, what's up guys, Vesper here. So, Mortal Kombat 11 has been out for a couple of weeks now, and I've been playing it and streaming it ever since, and I thought I'd give my own review on the game from a perspective of somebody who mostly plays Street Fighter, and there's a lot of things that surprised me about Mortal Kombat 11 that I feel like NRS has come a very long way on making this game as competitive as possible, and I feel like the people that haven't been keeping track of this game or keeping up with it might be missing out. And I know there's a lot of people asking on my stream, who are on the fence on this game, if it's worth picking up. And maybe this video can help you guys out understand the game better and why I like it so much compared to a lot of previous NRS titles. So first off, before we start, I just want to clarify that we're not going to be talking about the casual side of the game. We're not talking about the towers, the AI, the grind, none of that kind of stuff. You guys have heard that to death. We're simply talking about how competitive the game is, the actual gameplay, the mechanics, and what it's like to play against other human opponents. So let's start with the baseline part of the game, and that's the fact that the netcode in this game is godlike. It's so good, it's amazing. I honestly think it has the best netcode of any fighting game out there right now. First off, the information it gives you is amazing. It shows you if the opponent is on Ethernet, if it shows you if they're on wireless, it shows the MS right before you even play them, so you can even just decline right there if the connection is not good. And then the netcode itself is very, very good. Even when a player has over 150 MS, I'm able to play Mirror, and the connection is definitely playable, and he lives in Italy, and he has over 260 MS when I play against him. It also has online training mode, which helps you learn things very, very fast, and it also has one of the best tutorials I've ever seen in a fighting game that goes over more than just the basic stuff. It explains stuff like jailing, zoning, frame traps, frame data, a lot of very important information that's very hard to explain, especially in game. So right off the bat, I think the baseline part of the game is very robust and very, very good for somebody who's casual, who wants to go into a more competitive environment. So moving on, let's talk about the actual gameplay and mechanics of Mortal Kombat 11. I actually went into this game blind. I didn't cover it. I didn't really keep track of any of the news for it. So when I got my hands on it, I was really surprised by how different it was from previous NRS titles like Mortal Kombat X, Mortal Kombat 9, or Injustice 2, which I played a little bit myself. The first big noticeable thing is that the game is a lot slower pace. All your attacks, whether it's your specials or your normal attacks, have a lot more weight to them. There's a lot of recovery, a lot of consequence, there's a lot of things that are unsafe, and because of that, there's a lot more neutral in the game. Well, in my opinion, there actually is neutral, where you actually have to space everything correctly and be really careful about throwing things out. It's no longer about just like jumping in. I'm talking this from a casual perspective, of course, but basically jumping in and trying to land your biggest, fattest combo, which does like 70% into some kind of vortex or mix-up. Like I said, it's a lot more Street Fighter-like, I would say, especially with a lot of the attacks are actually very long range as well for many characters. The movement in the game is also pretty slow in general. They took out run from the game, so now you're just dashes and back dashes, and those are also quite slow and barely cover any distances for many characters. And I think NRS took a really big risk with this because from someone who plays Street Fighter, this sounds good to me, but for people who are used to NRS games, I don't know, it's risky, right? Because they're used to having this really high mobility game, and I'm sure there's some characters that make up for that, but for the most part, everything else is much slower than it was before. The meter management is also interesting in this game as well. So everything is basically on this short cooldown where you have 2 bars for offensive attacks such as meter burning your specials, or using defensive mechanics, which all take meter as well. And even though when you were playing you don't really notice things are on cooldown, you don't really think of it that way, but it does stop certain things from being spammed, and it does help you know what your choices are when your opponent is out of those resources, which is really nice. So there's like a meme with the Trident Rush spam in Injustice where people are getting chipped down by Aquaman, for example. You can't really do that in this game because, like I said, your meter is replenishes over time, and it's more like a cooldown system. So another thing I want to talk about that's pretty much changed is the fairness of the game. So there's, in previous NRS titles, basically there's a lot of overheads, at least for me, that are completely unreactable, which makes no sense, and some of them are safe on block, and it's just crazy to me. But now in Mortal Kombat 11, most overheads are reactable, or if you're really looking for it, they're reactable, and for the most part they are punishable as well depending on their speed, which is really nice. Also, the vortex game is not as prevalent as it was before for many characters. I mean, some characters still have definitely their mix-ups, and there's still definitely a 50-50 here or there, but it's not as crazy as it was before. Like I said, the game is not perfect, but NRS has definitely come a long way and been more conscious about it. And of course, we get some more patches. I'm sure they'll try to take out most of these when people discover them for different characters. So right now there's a larger focus on the knockdown game. Basically, you knock down your opponent and what their options are, and pretty much everything has a sort of counter to it, and you can snowball from there. But it's not really about landing a combo and then the opponent has to guess between a high or low mix-up and going from there. Now it's more about understanding the frame data, understanding what their strings are, and knowing what kind of combinations there are, and anticipating it. And like I said, there's a counter for everything, and it's just a lot more fair system in general. One last thing I want to talk about in terms of the general things I like about this game is that, you know, it's always been weird to me to use a block button to block, but one really cool thing, if you really like, you know, whiff punishing in other neutral-based fighting games, is that when you walk backwards in Mortal Kombat, there's obviously no proximity guard. So what I mean by that, if you don't know what proximity guard is basically when you're playing something like Street Fighter, for example, and someone sticks out an attack while you're walking backwards and your character is close enough to them, they won't go into block animation. So what this allows you to do is to weave in and out of attacks very easily in Mortal Kombat, because you'll never go into blocks unless you actually press the button. And it just gives me a better sense of freedom in the game when I'm trying to bait people to stick out attacks. And it's just something that I think is cool, that's unique to Mortal Kombat because there's a block button. Okay, so let's talk about some of the unique system mechanics in this game. And by the way, there actually is a lot of mechanics in this game, but one thing they do a really good job with is keeping it intuitive and not too bloated and overwhelming. Even though there is a lot of mechanics, a lot of them are simple or limited, and makes it easier for someone coming into fighting games to not feel too overwhelmed. So the first off is the crush counter system, which might sound something different if you play Street Fighter V, but basically it's something where certain attacks in the game have certain stipulations that if you hit them in certain circumstances, it'll create a crush counter and you'll get bonus damage and even a combo follow-up on them. The limitation to the crush counter system is that you can only do it once a single match, not even a round, a single match. It also, for example, one is like if you're down 2, that's your uppercut. If you happen to do it when somebody is recovering from an attack, or basically using it as a punish, you'll go into an animation, do bonus damage, and you can combo after. So if someone does something really unsafe, rather than just doing your normal straight into a combo like you usually would, you might be like, hey, maybe I should uppercut him instead and get some bonus damage, and that'll use up your crush counter for that match. So it allows you to do some unique things and keep things fresh, so you're not just repeating basically your same B&B over and over. Also, the combo system in the game is actually quite short, and much lower damage, not as, like I said, a central focus of the game anymore. And since your meter has a cooldown now, basically you have to master, you know, different B&Bs using 1 bar and 2 bar if you want to blow both bars at once, which actually is a downside in certain points because there's a lot of scaling in the game as well. So the meter management system is actually quite fun, especially when you mix it up with crush counters as well. The crush counters are also unique and character specific, so not every characters have the same amount of crush counters or the same type of crush counters. One more example, like with Scorpion, is that he has one string that will cause a crush counter at the end if you've already done 7 hits or more. I think it's 7 hits, but this is really cool because that means as an ender to your combo, you might want to use that as a crush counter instead. So like, once again, this kind of makes you think of playing the game in different ways, and which is always great, and basically have like this game plan. That's what I liked a lot with the crush counter system in Street Fighter V at the beginning as well, because I'm like, a normal that you wouldn't otherwise use, you're trying to figure out a way to land it. But the crush counter system is not just limited by your normals. It also could be a throw, it could be an attack and a special. There's a lot more possibilities with it. So now I want to mention some mechanics that I feel like they did a really good job making them intuitive, and that is the hop, the get up reversal, and the flawless block. So there's a hop in the game. It's like a small jump from KOF, for example, but you can only hop straight up. You can't hop forward, you can't hop back. So like I said, it's limited. It can dodge throws, it can dodge low profile attacks, but the attack that you can do from the hop is you can only press punch or you can only press kick, and either one will have the same attack. So, and one will cause a knockdown, and they're basically considered overheads as well. So basically everyone gets a universal overhead, but it doesn't feel too bloated or too overwhelming for some, because one, the hop can only go straight up, can't go forward or back, and since they all are just overhead knockdown attacks, you can't get anything from them, and you only have to remember punch or kick. The get up reversal, so basically there's get up attacks in the game. They're basically reversals of this game that you can use for every single character, universal reversals, and you can only use up 2 or up 3, and one is a launcher that's not invincible and which you can combo from, and the other one is an invincible attack that you can't combo after, basically. And these some of them are punishable, some aren't, but the cool part is these 2 attacks for every character also come from another mechanic called flawless block, and that's basically if you time your block, I think within 2 frames. It's basically like a just defend or a just guard, and when you use these, you basically have universal reversal attacks you can do when you just guard, and it's the same reversal attacks when you're doing your get up attacks. It's either up 2 or up 3. So like I said, from someone who's just a beginner at fighting games, it's really easy to grasp because you're using these same exact attacks for either your get up reversal or your flawless block, so it's not too overwhelming and it's easy to remember. So Mortal Kombat 11 has a ton of defensive mechanics when you're knocked down, things you can do when you're getting back up, and like I said, neutral and the knockdown game are more of a central focus now, and these defensive mechanics all have different counters to them that you can do, making them more fair, and they can't be abused too much because, like I said, you have a defensive meter in this game that's on cooldown. So the first thing you can do when you're knocked down is you can roll left or right if you want to. These could be countered by throw, kind of like, you know, if you're used to playing Capcom versus SNK, for example. Another mechanic is you can do just a delay wake up, which actually doesn't cost anything. It can throw your opponent off if he's trying to time a meaty, for example. Another thing is the get up mechanic, which I just explained, the get up reversal. The non-invincible launcher one has a risk reward of if it's blocked, usually it's punishable, or it can be ducked if it's like an uppercut, right? And or it can be hit by a meaty because, like I said, it's not invincible. There's also the other get up attack that is invincible. That one usually you can neutral jump bait it, or you can just outspace it and whiff punish it. So like I said, there's a lot of counters to these things, and it doesn't feel like, you know, for example, a character will have a certain special attack that will teleport them that's also invincible or anything like that. Like I said, most of these are just streamlined and more intuitive and more universal, which you can anticipate across the other entire cast, and you don't have to remember as much, and it gets you into the game right away. Finally, I want to talk about the 2 main comeback mechanics of the game. First off, there's a breakable mechanic. Basically, it's their version of the combo breaker. Now it's only limited to if you're juggled in the air, you can basically fall straight down and break the opponent's combo. So this is first off limited to the fact that the opponent has to knock you up. So if you're somebody who's self-conscious of this, you might be like, okay, well, I'm going to focus on most of my combos hitting the opponent on the ground and give up some damage, but therefore not have it being broken. Another thing is when you use this mechanic, it uses all of your defensive meter. So after this, if your opponent is, you know, noticing this, he's going to realize that you have no defensive options when you're getting up and can really capitalize off that. So there's definitely a consequence to it. The other comeback mechanic is, I think it's called Fatal Blow. It's basically the X-ray or supers of this game, which are guaranteed to you when you're down to a certain amount of health. The limitations of this is, one, you cannot use it more than once a match when you finally land the hit. So that's something that you don't really have to worry about every single round of someone hitting you with this Fatal Blow attack. And of course, when you block them, they are punishable and predictable because they're only available when your opponent has a certain amount of health left, and it's not tied to your meter. So it's something when the opponent is quite low. So that's pretty much all the core mechanics of the game, off the top of my head anyways. It's really hard to condense it all into a single video. Maybe in the future I'll go through all the mechanics with you guys one by one in real time for more clarity. If YouTube lets me anyways. YouTube is really doesn't like Mortal Kombat because it's too violent for you guys. But, you know, we'll see. I just really wanted to get this off my chest and share what I feel about the game. I really feel like if you guys are looking for a fighting game really hungry for a new one right now, and you haven't been paying attention to Mortal Kombat 11, I think you guys should really give it a shot. Just for the netcode alone, man. Even if you don't like the game, it's just nice to not play crazy rollback league matches, at least from my perspective. So I do think the game is worth checking out, though. Of course, you know, I do have some criticism. It's not perfect. You know, it still has some, you know, things, NRS things that you guys might not like. There still is, you know, some vortex, some 50-50s, some unreactive, near unreactable overheads, definitely some balance issues, but I feel like NRS this is the closest NRS has gotten to making the game feel really competitive to me, and I think like a better game suited that we'll see in tournaments for a while. So we'll see how the lifespan is, but you know, like I said, NRS is notorious for patching the games a lot, so maybe they'll tackle these kind of things. We'll see if will follow the same path as they have on previous titles. So guys, share me your thoughts. Thanks for taking the time to listen to me in this video. For the people that have already purchased the game, what do you think of it so far? Or for the people that haven't purchased it and maybe I changed your mind, let me know. If you want some more info, you can check me out on Twitch. It's VesperArcade on Twitch. I'll put the link in the video and in the chat. You can just watch me play, and maybe that'll help base your decision better. I might make some guides for Mortal Kombat in the future, whether it's general guides. I know Miriam will be helping me with some. And maybe some character guides as well, because I'm learning a bunch of characters. Once again, we'll do what YouTube allows me to do. So if you guys are interested in that, maybe subscribe to my channel, hit that like button, it really helps out. And yeah, I'll see you guys with more videos on Mortal Kombat 11 in the future. So till then guys, take care.